This week on the STORYCRAFT Society, we're going to be talking about how to make this awesome hot springs and why it didn't take me that long and why I don't care. Let's go. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the STORYCRAFT Society. My name is Garmin and we are going to be talking about a video today that's going to kind of be the yin to the yang of last week's video. Now, if you didn't catch it, will be in the description below, but I talk about how I worked on a ruined tower piece. I mean, it took me over a month to complete and I absolutely worked as hard as I could to make that the best piece I've ever made. This piece that I made this week, I didn't put that much effort into. I hardly put any effort into it. And that's okay too. Really, I think the core of this video idea is just to tell you that sometimes it's good to put all of yourself into a project and sometimes it's good just to crank something out because it's fun to make terrain. I think you need both as a crafter to grow and certainly to keep your sanity. One thing that I would like to mention is that my players will be just as excited for this piece as they were for the Ruined Tower, when that one took me a ton of time and this one only took me 2 days to finish. So make of that what you will. We're gonna dive into talking about how I breezed through this process. I cut corners, but it still turned out awesome and I'm really excited to show you. So let's get talking about it. So to start things off, I'm going to talk a little bit about the adventure that I'm going to be running and why I needed these hot springs, and then also show you the plans that I drew up to get this thing underway. So the heroes are going to be traveling through a mountain pass, at the top of which is a trading post that sprung up around a hot springs, and down in the hot springs there is going to be a fierce water-infused fire elemental that is basically making the folks that run it unable to do business there. So the heroes are going to get to go down in, they're going to fight some cool water hybrid fire elemental thing. I got this out of Tome of Beasts 2 by Coupled Press. It is a little bit of a weird monster, but that's all right. All of that being said, I needed the area, so I sketched out these plans really quick of what the hot springs would look like. There's going to be 2 different changing rooms, one for more luxury guests where they would be all by themselves. They wouldn't have to worry about anybody else being in there with them, and the more common changing room where the common folk would come in, and there's going to be lots of people throwing all of their stuff into these like chests and their clothes on piles and stuff there. And then when you go in, the area will be set up that there's kind of one spring over here and then a big waterfall. I wanted a focal piece so that there's that kind of wow factor that your eye is drawn to when the players come into the hot spring area there. I knew I wanted a waterfall and then some separate pools where the guests could go in and relax, but now where the players are going to have to fight this elemental. So I took it after I got my plans all drawn out and then I sketched it onto a piece of 1-inch thick XPS insulation foam and started to get the idea of what the layout would look like on foam. So on the plans, I left all of the heights that I included for all of my different foam pieces if you want to craft this thing along with me, or you decide that you would want to run this encounter for yourself. What I did was I basically just cut those pieces out. I did them freehand on my Proxxon. You could easily do these with an Alpha knife. It would give you no issue there. For me, it was just easier to do it with the hot wire tool. Quickly zipped all the way through it, organized all the pieces, and then I got them all glued together using hot glue. But before I did that, I made sure to texture all of the pieces, and then I made my pools about a 1/4 inch deep using a lighter by going over the top and burning down into the foam. Now you want to make sure you do this in a well-ventilated area. I only did one on camera, and then all the rest I actually did over my stove where the oven hood could pull up the fumes. But I just took the lighter and quickly burned in an area that was just, like I said, a 1/4 inch deep. We're going to be filling those with our water effects later. One thing that I did that definitely could have taken me more time and I think would have resulted in a better looking piece, but unnecessarily, is I could have spent more time making sure that the pieces fit together perfectly. That didn't bother me at all. As long as they were close, that was fine. And then what I could do is later fill all the gaps. There's a lot of different products that I could have used to fill all of my gaps around my hot springs. And the product that I decided to go with was my rapid setting tile grout. I just wanted to be able to do stuff a lot quicker. This was a project where I was not going for the most outstanding result possible. I was just going for fast. So this tile grout worked out great. I just mixed it up to an appropriate consistency. Actually, when I made this, I actually made it a little bit bit too thin. I wish I would have made it just a touch thicker. That's how it goes sometimes when you work with what you've got. But I took that and then just would dip my finger in it and smush it down into all of the gaps, making sure to try to get a smooth kind of curved transition. I didn't spend a whole lot of time on this. I definitely didn't kill myself making all the details perfect, because sometimes you just don't need to do that. That definitely, I think, was the part of the project that took me longer than anything else. But I got all of that done, and while that was drying, I cut out the rest of the piece using an Olfa knife, and once I got that all done, then I took a tinfoil ball over the rest of the piece to get it all ready to go. The one thing that I didn't film was I made sure to use a lighter to create that pool over there as well. The thing was finally really starting to come together at this point, and really started to look in real life the way that it looked in my head. So I was starting to get excited here, and now it was time to move on to our base coat. Blackmagic Craft base coat. So I covered the whole thing in Blackmagic Craft base coat, and I did this for actually a different reason than I normally do. So obviously I want the whole piece to turn black. Obviously I want the foam to get a little stronger. But the thing that really is important is I'm gonna be using 5-minute epoxy here in the future to do some of my water effects. And that 5-minute epoxy, if it's just right on foam, I believe it'll melt it. Actually, I don't know if it'll melt it. It seems like it should melt it. I just kind of always assumed, I guess, that it would melt it. But for me, I didn't want to take the risk, so I definitely made sure that everything, including the pools, were double Mod Podged. I didn't just do one coat in the pools, I did 2 coats. Once that was all dried, then I moved on to painting. Now, painting was very simple. This might be one of the easiest paint jobs for a full piece like this that I've done on the channel. I literally just took my 3 colors of brown, a dark brown, medium brown, and light brown, and I dry brushed over the entire piece, literally the entire piece. And then also I did a coat of flat black around the back of this piece here. No real reason to do that other than I just think that the flat black looks nicer from the back. All of that said, we moved on to the hardest part of this whole piece for me, which was painting the pools. I took a dark bluish green as well as a light blue, and then the remnants of the brown paints actually from all of my other areas, and I started to paint out the pools as best as I could, focusing on darker colors where I thought the pools would be deepest and lighter colors where I thought the pools would be more shallow. They ended up turning out great, and I was certainly pleased with the result, but then it was on to the scary part of this build, which is starting to do the water effects. Most of the time when I do my water effects, I actually just use Lexol, but I would like for this to appear like a little bit smoother of a surface, because obviously these are inside of a cave. I'm only gonna put the Lexol on top, and then I'm gonna use this 5-minute epoxy as my base layer here. So we're gonna start putting that on, and we're gonna see how that works. One thing that you'll notice is that there actually is bubbles that formed in the 5-minute epoxy. That was absolutely unintentional. But what is nice about them is, I mean, they are supposed to be hot springs, so it just looks like bubbling hot water. Happy little accident that I think is really gonna make the project turn out even better than I was expecting it to, So the final part of getting this thing crafted and finished was I needed to do my waterfalls. So I did those using Lexol, which is my favorite product for doing any kind of top surface water effects. And I will tell you true, this is not the way to make waterfalls. I don't think that this waterfall looks particularly great. In fact, I would rate it as like a 3.5 out of 10. But I'll tell you what it did do. It was fast. And my players will love it, whether I am happy with it or not. I think that's kind of the moral of the story of this episode. Even if you craft fast and do something that isn't up to your personal standards, I think that your players will still love it and be excited by it because you get to play on cool terrain. I will say in the comments below, if you know of a way that I could have like quickly done a couple of little tiny things that spruce this waterfall up, I would love to hear it. Maybe I could use that in a future build, and other people obviously can mine the comments for useful things there as well. Once that was done and dried, the piece was done. 2 days, and when I say 2 days, I mean 2 evenings of working on this thing, and I had this awesome piece done. So let's look at some glamour shots and then we can close out this video. Last week we talked about making a craft that you put your whole self into and make the best everything that you possibly can. This week we're talking about the opposite of that. We're talking about just make something for fun. Come up with an idea, something that you want to throw into your game, make it and make it fast. Have fun with it. Don't kill yourself worrying about all the little small details that you'll be the only person who notices. And I think that that's just as cathartic. I think making something top to bottom and making it perfect is really cool. But I think this is cool too. So hopefully this either inspires you to make something like this or to work on that project that you don't want to work on because you're crippled by wanting to make it perfect. Who cares? Make something, make it fun. But that'll be all for this video. If you like this content, definitely subscribe to the channel. Leave me a comment below. Hit that like button. That goes a long way to helping the channel out a lot. If you want to know when our videos go live every week, which is Thursdays Eastern Standard Time at noon, you can hit the notification bell once you've subscribed, and it will let you know right in your newsfeed that our videos have gone up. But other than that, got nothing else to say. So until next week, I'll be seeing you. See? I wasn't kidding. It's a real thing. And they prefer hot springs. Weird monster, but it's gonna be fun to run.